since we just restarted the recording, let me take a quick step back. We're going to walk through creating a workflow using formula fields and automations. And I'm going to try to show you a few shortcuts and tricks along the way. We've added a whole bunch of things in what we've labeled the 247 release, which is our latest. And some of them are just handy shortcuts, and I'll try to show you the way that I do things to give you some ideas on how you can create your own. So what I've done here to get us started is I've just got a brand new solution. I renamed the default app projects, and we're going to create a project workflow where we're going to have projects and tasks, and we're going to use some formulas to kind of figure out where we're at in the process. So to get us started, let's just add a few project records. And here I've just got the standard assigned to, priority, status, due date. Right now, I'm going to hide a few things because we're going to focus on status primarily. So this is one option to remove fields from your view, is remove from display. Of course, you can also do that from this list and add them kind of in bulk. Now, one of the things that we added as a shortcut is, see how we've listed here, press Shift and Enter to add a new record. If you do that, it just goes directly to the next line, and you can easily add additional records. A nice time saver. So we'll just create a little bit of sample data. And now let's add our tasks application. So what we're going to do is use this to kind of track where we're at with the individual tasks that are required for this project. So to do that, let's go back over to projects. We're going to add a linked record field. And this is also something to note. If I just do that, if I leave the name linked record and I go and select tasks, and I'm going to say, yep, we're going to allow multiple records to be attached. And I need my toolbar to move here. What it'll do is it will name that field for you, linked to tasks. So that's kind of another handy shortcut. In this case, maybe we do just want to call it tasks. So I can come back in here and edit that, update the field, and we're good. Now let's go create a few sample task records, and we'll go link them to one of our projects to get started. Okay. Another handy thing here, row size. You don't think about it often, but when you have things like linked records, it can be really handy because it will expand this column to show all of those links, so you can quickly see what's in there. Okay, so you could just start using this application now, tracking what the status is manually, but we're going to drive this with a little bit of automation. So one of the things that I might want to know about these tasks is where they're at. What is their overall status? And I'm going to get rid of some of these description fields just to clean up the page a little bit. So each of these individual tasks have their own status. Now, at the top level project, you might want to know when these are complete and how many of them are complete. So let's go figure that out. And for this, we are going to use a formula. So what I'm going to use this formula for is to figure out which of those individual tasks are in a complete status. And I can do that pretty easily. What I'm going to do is use the Countif function. Now, Countif is really handy. There's a regular count as well. If I just did this and I go and I select tasks, this is handy too. When I hover, I can click use and it will insert that field into my formula for me. Now, here's the thing about working with linked records in formulas. So the syntax here, I've got the field name. This is the name of the linked record field. To actually look at the underlying fields, I type a period, and now you can see down here, it's changed to that linked records fields. If I just do a count of tasks, what that's going to do is it's going to tell me, okay, how many total items are listed here, but that doesn't give me the percentage complete. So I need to modify my formula just a little bit. And I'm going to use that Countif function that I mentioned. And here, what I'm going to do is point at the status field, and I want to see which of these are complete. And what I'm going to do, I forgot the second half of the statement. So the format of this, and here's another enhancement that we just added. When you click on the function name, it's going to automatically display the help. You don't have to come down here and click on it in the left-hand column anymore. It'll just jump to it. See if and you have this helpful little bit of text that tells you how to format it. So what I'm doing here in the first part of the formula is specifying my criteria. What do I want to evaluate? Okay, I only want to count this record if its status value is complete. And then what do I want to count? Well, I want to count tasks. And what I'm going to do is take that number and I'm going to divide it by the total number of tasks. And that will get me a percentage complete. Now, none of these are complete. So let's go in and flip one to a complete status. And now we see, oh, we've got 0.33, not 33. It's because we've just divided. We can come back in here and modify our formula. Let's enclose the whole thing in parentheses, and we'll multiply it by 100. Now, maybe you don't want 33.33. Maybe that's a little bit too much. To take care of that, we can go back into our formula and we can round it. And the round function will allow you to specify how many decimal places you want. So if we want a whole number, we can say 0. If I want, say, 33.3, I would specify 1. Let's just do the whole number here. And there we go. We've got our 33% complete. One thing to note here, you're not seeing a percentage sign, which we normally would probably want to do. Right? When you create a percentage field, for example, and I put 33 in there, it's going to show me 33 as a percentage. We're adding a function that will allow you to format numbers so that you could show them as currencies or as a percentage. So that's coming soon, just a preview. All right, everyone with me so far? Emma, any questions so far? Okay. All right, so now I know that we're 33% done with these tasks. And maybe I want to automate this a little bit and not have to manually flip the status. I'd like to know, just by virtue of the task being modified and one of them being completed, I know that something's going on. This is in progress. So what I can do, we'll go up to automations, and we can see that we don't have any here. So we're going to create one. Now, for this particular situation, I'm going to use the when a record matches a condition trigger, so that anytime this condition matches, it's going to take this action. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at projects, and I'm going to take a look at that percentage complete formula. And I only want to execute this trigger when something changes. And in this case, the first thing that I want to know about is when it changes from is 0, meaning we don't have anything complete yet, to less than 100. Because when you have no tasks complete, you're going to have a 0 in that formula field. 100 means everything's complete. So we want the in between. So and we're only going to do this when we have a change in the number. And when that happens, we're going to update the record. Now, this is another place that I want to mention that we have some enhancements coming in future releases as well. We're working on essentially a find type of capability where you could use a find action to go and select which application you want to update. Right now, when you say update a record, it's just updating the record that triggered this automation. And in this case, that's what we want, because I want to set status to in process. when you're all done, and remember to name these as well, because when you have a bunch of them, it can be a little more difficult to sort through. So we'll say set in process status. And then I'm going to add this automation. It also asks you if you want to switch it on. Sometimes you may want to keep that off while you're making other modifications and you don't want it to fire yet. But in this case, yep, let's do that. And we will close out of the automations window. And now let's change one of these back. I think I modified the first one. Let's change this guy back to backlog. And we will see, okay, we're back to 0. And now let's flip this back to complete. And we could say, if you wanted to pick up the first one that was in process, just the change in process as well. So in this case, we'll just look for the complete status. And then here back in our projects, we see that we're 33 and we just flip to in process status. So you can use this value to drive this value and then not have to make that manual change. It's also really convenient to use these conditions to set the status explicitly so that people have to sort of follow the rules, right? Certain things have to be in place before the status can be set to complete. I've done a few of these where when certain things aren't filled out or aren't of the right value, you can actually change this back to maybe you're ready for review or some other intermediary state if somebody just tries to jump right to the end and say, yep, we're done. So we can extend this a little bit by adding a second automation. Again, matching a condition. I'm going to look at that same field, percentage complete, also on change. And this time I'm going to say from less than 100 to is 100. And in this case, we're going to update that status and say, hey, this is ready for review. Switch that on, go back to our app. Let's make sure all of these are completed. Now we're 100%, and we wait a couple of seconds. And this should flip over here in a minute to complete, or ready for review, rather. I think that's what I said. Pretty sure. Yep, ready for review status. And there we are, ready for review. Okay, that was a couple of steps. Do we have any questions or anything that you're wondering about this type of process? You can use these same steps and techniques to do this for multiple phases. You can do user assignments. There are all sorts of different things that are possible using the combination of this formula with automations. No questions so far? All right. Well, so let's add maybe a next level to this. So what we can do now in a typical project management process, you might do a little bit of hours tracking, right? So over here in my tasks, we have a field type called time tracking log. Let's add one of those. And time tracking log is handy. It allows you to come in and say, I'm working on task 1. I want to specify that maybe I work for 1 hour and 30 minutes on some task. Add time, and you can continue to do that and add multiple values. You can also specify the date, and let's say other task done. And it just keeps incrementing this overall time. Now that's great for the individual ones, but maybe you're wondering about this at the project level. So that's again where our handy formula field comes in. We'll add a formula and we'll call this total time. And here with a formula, the default option is to just perform a numeric operation on 2 number fields. So if I wanted to do something, say I had a quantity and a price, I could multiply those together here very simply. We're going into the advanced editor to do some slightly more complex things. And in this case, what we want to do is we want the sum of all of the tasks, and I want the sum of time tracking log. All right, that sounds good. Let's do that. We'll add our formula and look at this and go, why is it 9,000? Well, what the time tracking log field does is it stores time in second increments. Now that's its granularity. And right now that formula is returning the number of seconds. We probably want this in hours. And fortunately, that's easy to do because all I have to do is come in here and divide by 3,600, which is the number of seconds in an hour. And I will have this value in hours.
Peter?
Yep. Question?
How long does it usually take for an automation to run?
It varies based on the number of automations that are currently running, but they generally take between 1 second and 5 seconds. Now, sometimes, again, more complex tasks can take a little bit more time, but that's typically the average. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So now I've got the total time for any of the tasks. If I go back and maybe I want to add, I'm going to add 5 hours here, and I'll add another 3 hours here. When I go back to my project, I can see that total time rolled up. So let's take a look at one other kind of creative thing you can use with a formula to evaluate this. And to do that, let's remove a few of these fields that we're not using right at the moment. And maybe I want to compare this to a budgeted amount. Maybe I have an hour's budget for my project, and I'd like to know where I'm at. So to do that, let's just track budget hours. And maybe for this particular project, it was 12. Now we can use another formula to take a look and compare those values. Call this budget status. And the interesting thing that we're doing here is we're actually going to, you can see total time shows up with this FX icon, meaning that it's a formula. You can use the output of a formula in a formula. And I'm going to do that right now. And we're going to use an if statement to evaluate it. So I'm going to say if, and here's just kind of a tip. When you're typing formulas in, white space is ignored. So you don't have to type everything on one line. See what I did here is I closed the parentheses so that I kind of keep track of where I'm at. And then I'm going to use tabs to separate things out so I can see what's going on, what I'm evaluating, and what the outputs are. So the first thing that I want to do is say, if the total time is greater than budgeted hours, that's probably not good. We're over budget. So I'm just going to say that this is the output of the formula if that's the case. But then we have an interesting situation because we still have 2 more levels to evaluate. We want to say if it's on budget or if it's under budget. And what you can do is you can actually nest if statements together. So what you're doing here is this is the evaluation. What you're evaluating for the if. This is if this part of the if statement is true. And then the second part is what do you do if it's false? And in this case, I'm going to do another if. And I'm going to space things out so I can keep track of what I'm doing. And this time I want to say time equals, and I'm kind of force of habit using double equals. You can also use a single equals, both work. Total time equals budgeted hours. We're going to say on budget. And then we know that it's not over and it's not equal, so it must be under. So otherwise, we're going to say under budget. And there we go. We don't have any errors, so we know that we're closed out. We've got all the parentheses we need in the right places, and we can add this formula. So right now, everything's under budget. Let's go change that. Maybe we add another 5 hours here. Oh, that's probably not going to be good. And you can see that the output is exactly what we would expect. Let's add another sample task here. We'll put this one right at 10 hours. Let's add that one to project B. And we will see that the output goes down. Oh, we need a budget. On budget. Perfect. The other thing that's just kind of a handy trick with these is you can use the output from a formula to do things like group. So if I wanted, now I've got all these values available for grouping. So I can see which projects are under budget, what's over budget, what's on budget. Handy. And then we could also use this status, of course, to drive additional actions and formulas. One of the things that you might want to do is maybe you only put something in a ready for review state if it's over budget. If it's on budget or under, then it just goes to complete. You could absolutely do that conditionally, just baking in this over or under budget function back up here in your automation. So this one, the ready for review, we could add a condition and say, and you could say, you know, it is over budget, and react to it by setting that ready for review state. Let's just cancel out of that. Okay, any questions so far? Anything that someone would like to see me build out, or questions about formulas or other ways to use our automations? Okay, let's take this one step further then. Let's add, maybe our projects have different types. That'd be pretty common, where let's say, well, let's do Smart Suite. Maybe this is customer onboarding. Maybe it's a data import project. Maybe this is just a requirements evaluation. Let's add that type. And let's say that if we're doing data import, maybe you want to have specific types of tasks that are associated with that. Here, we were just manually creating these individual records that represent the tasks. But let's say that when you create a data import project, it always has certain things that go along with it that you want to make sure are done and tracked. And that's an easy thing to do as well. Let's go back to automations, and we're going to add a new one. And now we can also use when record matches condition, but this time we're going to look at type, and this will be when type changes from any to is, and here I can use the values directly out of that field. I'm going to say when type is data import. And this time, instead of updating the same record, I'm going to go create a new record. I'm going to specify that I want it created in tasks. And here, to create the title, let's use information from our trigger, and we'll include the name of the project. We'll say prepare import files. This is the task that we want to go create. But the second thing that we're going to do is we're going to set the link to projects. What this is going to do is it's going to automatically link this task back to the creating project. And I do that by putting the title or primary field value into this linked record. When I do that, it's going to automatically establish the linked record for me. We'll call this create data import task. Let's turn that on. And now let's show our field here. Maybe we want to say that this one is of type data import. And there you see our new task. And you can also see it's established that linked record back to project B. When you're doing this, one thing to keep in mind is that each one of these automations configurations with a single trigger can have up to 10 actions. So you could create 10 different records if you wanted to, and I've seen it done. Really handy way to just automate the manual business of going in and creating all of those records when you've got something that's set for a particular purpose. Another thing that we added that I wanted to mention here too, and let's add a checklist field. Maybe this is our review checklist, things that we just need to make sure that we always check. And checklists support a default value. Maybe you're always going to review hours logged for the project. So in every case, we're going to do one of those. Let's say back to our data import type. Maybe there are specific things that you want reviewed when you're going through and kind of performing your final sign off on this project. Now, and you notice that default item wasn't added because this record already exists. It only gets populated for new records. So that's also something to keep in mind. But if we go back here to our automations list, and we could even do it from the same automation, because right here we're creating a record. We could also update the same record. And let's say we wanted to add another thing to that checklist. This is a function that we just added where I can select my checklist. And in this case, I want to add a checklist item to the review saying review data import files for accuracy. You can also specify due date. You could specify assignee, and that could come from another field. I can add additional checklist items. In this case, maybe it's just that one item. We'll save that. It's already active. And say maybe project A is also data import type. Again, we'll get a project A prepare import files task here in just a minute. There it is. And we've also gotten this new review checklist item for reviewing our data import files. So this is a convenient way to have a dynamic set of checklist items. One of the other things that we're working on as a future enhancement is we'll have multiple checklist templates that can be applied, and you'll be able to set conditions and things to apply that checklist template. But this is a great workaround for right now, just using automations to recognize the conditions in this record, in this case, the type of project, and then adding the appropriate checklist items right there in line. And you can have a whole bunch of these. I know that I've seen a number of checklists that were dozens of items long. So the action accommodates for that. And then you can still modify or change these in the actual field as needed. So check that one out. It's something that just became available in this last release. One other thing I wanted to highlight too, if I double click, and of course I have the permission to do it, if I double click the field name now as a shortcut, it directly opens the field properties. You don't have to come over here, find the three-dot menu, go to modify settings and click it. Just any of these fields, it does the same thing. So yet another shortcut, as well as having a button down here at the bottom of the record. You can now just click this button and immediately get the field list and add a new field instead of, again, having to go to the three-dot menu, going to add field and kind of navigating around. You can just do it directly here. One other thing that we did is when you're in grid, let's say I want to see this budget status in the record, the complete record all at once. If I press the space key when I'm highlighting that field, it's going to open the record edit screen and highlight the field that you were on. So if you have a very large record, this is a nice convenient way to find what you're looking for. Just a few tricks of the trade. Okay. Do we have any questions? Is all of this making sense? Everyone's a formula and automations expert now, right? Okay. If no questions, any other things that you have had issues maybe building out, formulas that you're struggling to get just right? Any questions? Okay. If there aren't any other specific questions, maybe I can show you just a couple of additional things, a couple of tricks with formulas, or maybe lesser known features. Let's clear our fields to display. I'm going to add a single select field, and I'm going to call it score. Now, I don't know if you've ever clicked on this little open icon when you're creating a single or multiple select, but what it does is it gives you an expanded view, which is handy, and it also lets you load predefined lists of some typical things, country lists, age ranges, months of the year, that type of thing. But a little known feature is that you can also include a value. Let's create low, medium, and high. I can give these a numeric value, maybe low is 1, medium is 3, and high is 5. And I'm going to save those, add my field. And you might be wondering, well, what do you do with that? It doesn't, if I add a record here, if I say it's medium, I don't see my 3 value. That's where formulas come in. With a formula, let's call this numeric score. I can look at the value of that item. And if I just do this and have that as my formula, it's just going to display the same value. It's coming back with the text value of that values list. But there's a function that you can apply called numeric value that's going to go get the number value instead of the text version. There's my 3. This is great in all kinds of different calculations where what you really want to get at is a number. And instead of having a big complicated series of if statements where you have to get the value of that values list item just right, you can use the numeric value function and just directly pull that number. It's great for scoring. In risk and compliance, people use this to develop risk rating calculations. There are all kinds of interesting utilities where you can use this number value instead of the text value to make an evaluation or sum things up. Maybe I have a whole variety of these values lists or select lists in my application. You could sum them all up and get a total score. So just another tip. Let's see. Another thing that you may typically want to do, and let's go back to our project. Now, when you're using status fields, if you also have a date, the status field tells you kind of relative status. It'll tell you the difference between 2 dates, but you can also do that with formulas. So if I wanted to, I could go create a formula and use the date diff function. What date diff allows you to do, and here you see we've got a first date, a second date, and then the unit of time that you want the output in. And maybe I want to evaluate due date and now, and I want days returned. And we don't have a due date set, so it's going to be 0. Let's see if there is my due date field. Just add it to our grid. Say that due date is Friday. And so we're just a little more than a day from that date. If I want to, I can switch and put the now first, and I'll get a positive number, saying that we're plus that from the start of that due date. And there are a whole variety of formula functions that are available that can be used to manipulate dates. Again, very, very handy when you're doing things with projects and that type of kind of time sensitive stuff. There's also let's see if we can navigate down here, show you a list of all of the functions. You can also add dates, and that's really great for creating a formula that maybe uses a project start date, and then you want to add a certain number of days. Maybe phase 1 is always 14 days. You can just use date add to add on to that date. You can also convert the formats and get parts of the date and the hours and even the quarter. So there's quite a bit that you can do in here that allow you to do things that are very relevant to creating workflows and managing projects, programs, really any business process. These elements come into play. Okay. Emma, if we had any questions come in, otherwise I'd just open it up if anyone wants to jump in.
Someone's curious how we're competing currently with ServiceNow.
How we're competing with ServiceNow. Well, ServiceNow is focused. They kind of grew their business from maintaining from the side of service desk and maintaining your inventory of equipment and managing the service requests related to that. They have a very powerful API, but they're absolutely not low code. You have to write fairly complicated stuff to get ServiceNow to do the things that we're looking at doing here. If you're a big company managing your database of assets and equipment, it may be a great choice for you. But I would say that the contrast with SmartSuite is that we offer quite a bit of what the end user would get at the end of that kind of construction project in ServiceNow with very little configuration and setup. So it's really an ease of use thing, in my opinion, where, if you've got, again, very specific scenarios, ServiceNow or something like it may be a great choice. But, in building out these types of business workflows, we're trying to make that easy, efficient, and affordable. And there's another big differentiator as well. Hope I answered the question. Anything else? Feel free to go live if you'd like to. I think we've unmuted everyone, so you can switch your microphone on if you would like to.
And by the way, a few of you are asking, we will send you the recording. So you don't need to worry about, asking us questions or I noticed someone needed to jump off, but we always send out the recording to anyone who registers, regardless if you can make it or not.
Hey, Peter, I have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Oh, thanks. Not to steal John's thunder, because I know he's going to be talking about what's new and what's coming, but is there anything else you'd like to add for workflows and formulas that he may cover tomorrow, but since we have an audience today, you might want to bring up in addition to what you've already said?
Yeah, there are a variety of things that we're working on that relate pretty directly to constructing workflows. For one, we're making very significant enhancements to automations. And we just kind of touched on a few of the things that we currently have available today. We have the add a scheduled time, where you can specify intervals and have activities happening on a schedule. This is getting some enhancement just to make the interface even easier to use. We've also added when form is submitted, which could be used to kick off a workflow. Maybe you're capturing information from a customer or maybe a job applicant or something, and you need to have that information go through a particular workflow. You can recognize that form was submitted and kick off from there. We're enhancing both the kind of the inbound as well as the outbound side with additional integrations and just direct linkages to external platforms so that you can really use SmartSuite to drive workflows that involve either SmartSuite receiving information from another system or sending information to another system. And we've got a whole long list. I encourage people to go out to the community and take a look at some of the postings, as well as all of the feature requests where we've been tracking these things. We're adding things like Salesforce integration and the ability to go either create records there or ingest records with a trigger. And those can be used to create really powerful workflows where maybe your sales team is using Salesforce, but you're powering a whole bunch of other internal processes with SmartSuite. But you want to make sure everyone's synchronized and you're not duplicating customer lists. And maybe Salesforce remains your master list of customers. You can just import that data right in. So we've got a number of things in that direction. We're also making several enhancements to the formula field in giving you more ability to, and I mentioned a few as we kind of walk through things with formatting of numbers, working more extensively with lists of data, lists of records and arrays, just a variety of things like that, being able to more easily work with substrings or portions of an input piece of text. So those types of things are being added to just give you a lot of control over the content and data, and then ultimately the workflow through automations by recognizing some of the outputs of those formulas. So a lot more coming in John's chat tomorrow. I encourage everybody to join. It's going to be a great walkthrough of our near-term roadmap, and there's a lot. I'm interested to see how he gets it all into an hour session, but he can talk fast, I suppose. All right, anything else? No? Emma, are we pretty well wrapped up then?
Yes, I think so.
All right.
Oh, tomorrow's webinar is it's on what's new and coming soon. And I will send you the invitation right now. And then lastly, we do have a last question. Can we automate the print a report function based on scheduling and then add the PDF report to a field?
Not yet. Not yet. You could absolutely, well, let me think through. Yeah, right at the moment, you can't have it generate the print output with an automation. That's an interesting idea. You can specify an attachment in an email, but you can't attach the output of a particular report. But I think that is actually a feature request that we're already tracking. You can include the contents of any record in that outbound email. And you can even include updates and changes that were made to the record, but not the formatted PDF content. But that's a great suggestion. Okay. If that's it, I thank everyone for joining. Hope I answered a few of your questions, and look forward to seeing you on future webinars.
Peter, can I have a question, sorry?
Absolutely.
So yeah, what I was meaning that generating a PDF report based on a time scheduling, that would be really nice to be automated, but also then re-upload that to a specific field of the table, like to an attachment field.
I see. Yeah, no, that's a good idea as well. Being able to take the output of that report and attach it as a PDF. One thing, not to steal too much of John's thunder, but one of the things that we're working on, and we haven't even decided on the final name of the feature yet, but we're creating essentially a page designer. And we're not going to use the word page. It's probably either going to be document or PDF creator or designer, where you'll be able to, I don't know if you've ever used products like PandaDocs and that sort of thing, where you can design a form and then populate it with data. We're going to give you the same capability. And with that feature, you'll be able to create a formatted document and then do things like what you're talking about. Attach it to a field, send it in an email, send people a link to it. For generating, documents of all sorts, from invoices to, order sheets to legal documents, if you wanted to, and just populating that PDF with SmartSuite data.
That's really cool. Actually, it's only possible in Airtable right now with automations, with Make, for example.
Yeah.
So, or
right.
Writing script also. But even though, yeah, Airtable has the page designer, you can only generate one page PDFs, so not multiple page PDFs.
Not ours.
Yeah,
We're going to
that's
support dynamic height items. So you don't have to have everything fixed like Airtable does. So if your table of invoice line items goes on for 3 pages, we'll generate 3 pages. And
really cool.
obviously we're doing multiple page. So I think what you're going to get in Smart Suite is much more usable and practical than what Airtable is currently offering. So
Awesome.
coming
Thank you.
soon, we're working hard on it. We've got 2 guys that's all they're doing is creating this feature.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thanks again for joining and see you at the next webinar. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.